lot of fathers out there. It's like when you argue in front of your kids, sometimes you don't realize the amount of impact that you have on their lives. Whether
You got to pay the price today so you can pay any price tomorrow. Right. So Dr. Alex, you were letting me know that this is a meaningful quote to you.
yeah,
What does it mean to you?
it means to me that, you know what, it's okay to work hard, right? It's okay to work hard at what you love doing right now for your family, for your legacy, so that in the future you can live a more, maybe more comfortable life, right? A life that you aspire to live. You know, I want in the future where my daughter is proud of the family she grew up in. I want, you know, the people that work for me to be proud for the company that they work for, and to be able to provide a good life, not just for myself, but to provide a really good life for my staff as well, whether it's in the US or abroad, you know, virtual assistants. So
What's the virtue? What's the value that has caused you to use that as a lens for what
mhm.
you're creating, this empire, right? This legacy.
Yeah, I think that for me, I didn't grow up with very much, but I also see the possibility of what's out there.
Mm.
And I'm all about, Jay, experiences. I'm about the experience. Materialistic stuff does not much for me unless if it can provide an experience, you see.
Yeah.
So that's where, like, you know, one of my goals is to take my whole office on a trip somewhere for them to experience it. Another goal is to go and visit the Philippines where our virtual assistants are. And we'll go to a resort so that they can have a phenomenal experience as well. So I'm all about the experience.
Where did this come from? What was it that
Uh,
set up for you that this was a value in your life?
I think it's a value in my life only because I realize how little, due to finances growing up, we were not able to experience as a child. You hear about so and so doing something fun during the summer, right? And we just pretty much in the summer, we if we go further than an hour drive, that was a far trip, right? That was really far, like more, whoa, an hour. You know, we could go to Monterey once a year, and that was a 2-hour drive, an hour and 45-minute drive. I was like, whoa, you went to Monterey, right? Because when the finances aren't right, the gas costs money, entrance fees cost money, the lunch out there costs money, right? And when you're in a touristy spot, it costs way more money than if you just ate locally. So because of that, we weren't able to have some of the experiences that maybe other people had. And I didn't know it at the time, but now that I know about it, I would like other people to experience that, because an experience you'll remember forever. You know, people don't get together and talk about, oh, this cool watch and whatnot. There's, oh, you got a cool watch, cool. Yeah, you're wearing that for other people. You're not really wearing it for you.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
like the
so
I like the distinction between status and story, right?
right.
The experience is the story. It's share. It's you can collaborate, imagine together as you're telling the story, as you're sharing the experiences, you're building community. But the status symbol not being it, right? It's not the Lambo, it's not the wristwatch, it's not the clothes, it's not the job, it's something else. That's really fantastic. That's a great awareness. What is it? Tell us a little bit more about that environment, and specifically of you growing up. Specifically, you know, what did you learn? What did you want to take with you, and what did you want to leave behind?
what I learned over time is no matter how old you are, you will remember the people and the places that you've been to that you have an emotional attachment to. You know, like the first time you went somewhere and was like, wow, or the first time you realized that this was something possible. For example, I went to an uncle's restaurant when I was in China, and I've never met him before, right? But in the family, this uncle was always known as, oh yeah, he's got a lot of money and this and that, you know. Instead of having kids in China, he has his kids in Thailand so that he can have multiple kids, right? But it was the first time I stepped into his restaurant was this, you know, you can go to restaurants. There's not a lot of restaurants you could just pull out and say, oh yeah, I remember. But this one, a massive opening. You walk in and there's a huge window to the kitchen that it's all enclosed, but you can see it right away. And just the way that people are greeting you, right? And this massive, amazing, beautiful outdoors walking area, indoor area. I mean, it was just massive. But it's also the way that when you're there, it made you feel special to know him, and the way that you were treated in these private rooms, having dinner in private rooms with two people standing there to attend to you at all times. That's an experience. You know,
Yeah.
that's not materialistic. That's an experience. Right. So I was like, wow, this is amazing. And then every time he saw my grandmother, who has passed, the two times I've seen him, um, he, him, his mother and my grandmother were cousins. My grandmother took his mother in and lived with her and her kids, which my uncle being one of them, when they were really young and didn't have money. So now that he has amassed this wealth, every time I saw him, he would have this manila envelope full of cash and just hands it to her. I'm like, dang, that's what an amazing feeling to be able to give back to the people who gave to you that way. Just the way he did it was so subtle. You wouldn't know unless if you were sitting at the table. He wasn't walking around with this big old envelope coming in. He just takes it out of his bag and just hands it to her. She'll try to give it back every time. And he says, he puts his hand on the envelope and says, no, take it. Very subtle. One of the most subtle things. And if I wasn't sitting next to him, you wouldn't know it.
Mm. What did you learn that you wanted to take to your family? What was the lesson there?
The lesson there is you have to treat the people who have treated you well, and remember who took care of your family when you first got here. I look back at some of the aunts that I have when we first came into the States, you know, and we stayed in her house the first few months that we landed in the US. There were 4 of us that lived in her bedroom, you know, in one of her bedrooms. And as a kid, you know, she took us in when we first came to the States. As a kid, getting off school, I'll go over to her house. Summers, I'll spend at her house. And, you know, we ate the same thing her kids ate. It wasn't like there was a disadvantage or anything. You know, my cousins ate the same thing. I ate the same thing. Yeah, we had ramen and cup of noodles, but we had fun doing it. And nowadays, you know, every chance I get, I'll take her out. We'll go to dinner, take her places. I don't ask for money back. You know, you just do it because they genuinely care for you. And, you know, when I was a bad kid or whatnot, my mom would call her, she'll call me, and, you know, It was a lot of parenting. It's like it took a village to raise me. I know that.
So how are you I mean, what a great lesson from the generation above you, and what a great, like, not only in the gratitude of saying, wow, these people, my family very much took care of me. They very much provided for me in a specific way. I felt loved, I felt taken care of. What are you doing and how are you building that for your immediate family? For your wife, for your daughter? How are you building that?
For my wife, I remember she sees what we do, right? Not only do I take care of my mom, my aunts when we go out and whatnot, but in the event when her parents, my wife's parents, did a lot for me as well. Because in college, they would drive up an hour and bring us Tupperware full of food. And yeah, they knew that my wife and I were together. Right? I was just her boyfriend at the time, but they would bring up enough food for the both of us, knowing that I didn't have the financial backing to even buy a lot of food. I was living, to tell you, I was living after paying rent, and in college, I didn't have a room to stay in. Most of the time, for 3 years, I was staying in the living room. I rented a living room for $100 to $250, right? And when it's all said and done, when you pay for all the books and everything, I had $200 for food, gas, and extra stuff per month. So if there was free food, I'm there. Costco Tuesday and Fridays, they gave away samples. I was there. We take turns driving there and we just grab samples. So there's a meal taken care of right there during college. So when her parents bring up the food and everything, I just have a lot of gratitude for them. And every year, whatever they need, it's like birthdays, do they want to go on a trip, right? We'll make it happen. I'll sacrifice myself because they've sacrificed themselves at the time to make it happen for them.
Yeah, I love it. What are the lessons that you're imparting to your daughter so that she can also, and what are you teaching her? What are you teaching her?
Well, I show her what I'm doing, right? And I tell her, I said, you have to make sure that the people who have treated you well, that you treat them well. They are family. Yeah, we can't choose our family, and you don't choose. You don't hang out with every family member, but the ones who have been good to you, who are genuine, right? I teach her who really wants, like when she gets a lesson, like, hey, grandmother really wants you to do well. She genuinely loves you, in that way. So respect, you can't talk back, right? Is huge in my family. You got to be polite, right? You got to do stuff for them. And if they ask you to do things, you just go for it. You just got to make it happen, one way or another. If you don't have the time, then it's time and money. You got to give one, I feel like. So
You've gone from this place where you were being cared for, and now you've built an environment where you are the caregiver. You're talking about your aspirations of taking care of your team, your aspirations of taking care of your family. What would you say would be any key practices that a feel good father could learn about to, let's start with building a team. Like if they wanted to build a team, how could they do that?
well, if they want to build a team, are we talking about a team like a business team or like a family team?
Probably both. I mean, both would be very valuable.
Yeah. I mean, you need both, right? Building a team, the most important thing is you want everyone to be on the same page. They're going after the same goals, but you also want to let them know why you're doing what you're doing, that you do genuinely want them to have a better life, right? That when they produce and do what they're supposed to do, that they will have rewards that is able to give them the experiences that they want. And maybe they're more material driven, right? And that's okay. See, but I'm sure for everyone that is material driven, there's a reason behind it. There's a feeling, there's an emotional attachment of why they are so emotionally driven or materialistic driven. Is it to, some people will say, I do it not only to prove to myself that I could, but to prove to others that they could. That's a legitimate reason why someone wants a lot of materialistic things, right? Like you might see them as a show off, or you could see them, the reason why is to show others that it's possible, that they can have that life. Some people like to, attract people who want to have materialistic things in their life that show them that they can have the life. I rather show people a life. For me, it's more important that time and experience more important. I show the experience of the time that you can have with your family instead of buying them stuff. For me, it's, hey, you can have a life where you can enjoy time with your family and have an experience. That's what, that's what's important to me. So it really depends on what's important to them.
If you were mentoring another father or just another person in general, how would you figure out what's important to them?
I would have to ask them, what you gotta ask what's important to you, but then ultimately ask why. I thought, Jay, back in 2012, 2013, when I had my posters, my vision boards, they were, when you're young and you were influenced by MTV Cribs, right? Those videos, you remember MTV Cribs, right? You're influenced by that, and you want the cars, you want the house, you want the watch. I was like, when I make this much money, I want to get myself a Rolex, and those are important at the time. But as I got older, I realized, the moment you have a child, what's important is to make sure that you are a great father and a provider and a husband. That to me is way, way more important now and than a Rolex watch. We would pay just as much on a trip than to get a watch. It's like a 1 week trip will cost as much as a watch, but it's an experience, and it create pictures, created memories, whether it's you take that and you just experience it. Right. To me, that's way more. She's going to remember our Alaskan trip that we took 2 weeks ago. We flew to Seattle. From Seattle, we flew to Anchorage. From Anchorage, you have to fly to King Salmon, and then you stay in this really nice lodge in a city that has 0 cell reception. 0. I had 0 cell reception. The only time I had any reception was at the lodge that gave you 1 megabits per second. 1 Mbps. I can't even remember the last time I got 1 Mbps.
Right.
But the experience that we were around the bears, you walk amongst them. And at any point in time, there could be a bear 30 yards away. And you just have to get together, look big, create some noise. And the bears keep walking because they're fishing for salmon. They're not fishing for people. So it is kind of intense sometimes in the wild.
Yeah. Let's take this apex predator and be near them. That must be, walk us through that experience. That sounds awesome.
Yeah. I tell you, I had no idea where we were going. I didn't know what it was going to be like. I didn't know what the lodge looked like. My wife last year started seeing this live bear cam at a place called Brooks Falls. Well, they had a fat bear tournament. Well, the fat bear tournament, I didn't know. When I looked it up, it was talked about on Stephen Colbert. The Nightly Show talked about it. I mean, it's a big thing apparently. They talk about it on talk shows and news. They cover it. But this fat bear contest is at a place called Brooks Falls in Alaska, and this is where one of the last amazing migrations of salmon to spawn from an area called Bristol Bay. And she looked it up and she was like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. I'd love to go to it one day. I said, why don't we go next year? And, 2021, because of COVID, we weren't able to go, but 2022 came around and we rebooked it. There's a lot of flight problems, but when we got there, it was this amazing lodge. They came and picked us up, and every day you could have an excursion. The owner of the lodge comes and says, what do you guys want to do? You want to go see bears? You want to go on the boat or ride in on a float plane, right? And I call for boat on the lake all day long, because those float planes just, I don't know how I feel about that. I did it one time and I was like, oh my God, that 20-minute ride felt like 2 hours. Okay. But it was an experience. They drop you off right off the lake, on the beach. And the moment you get there, you look left and right and there's bears swimming. I mean, we're talking about 700-pound to 1,200-pound brown grizzly big bears, but they're so used to people. There's rangers around. But when you're walking on these trails, they tell you, if a bear just pops up, you got to back up slowly. They said, do not run. They haven't had an attack in decades, but because you just have to pay attention to your surroundings. But it was amazing. It was one of those things where it's one thing to see it on screen, and then to be there and experience it and be in like those waders, and you're walking in the stream where the bears are fishing. And when a bear comes by, okay, everybody back up about 50 yards, let the bear get by, and you just don't get in between the bears or their cubs.
You were talking about making sure other people get to experience this life, like they have these aspirations. And it felt to me, as you were describing this core difference between doing your research, seeing something on TV, having a dream, versus being there in person, and there's probably a better word, but the visceral nature of that intimacy with nature, or for this context, the immediacy of the live interaction with whatever that dream is, whether it's going to a beach, whether it's going to Alaska to see the bears, whether it's, maybe you're a cliff jumper, maybe you like cave systems, maybe you like, whatever it happens to be, going on a cruise.
Yeah.
Or that is, that there is this core difference between the dream, the thought, the aspiration, and then the experience.
Absolutely.
That's great.
Absolutely.
So what is it for the team, right? So that's the family, right? You create these things, you do that. How do we implement that for a team?
Well, for a team, we set goals. We set, monetary goals in the office. And as we get to these goals, we either have, well, this is what we're going to do, or, dinner here. Maybe there's some small kind of thresholds that you got to meet. Then we do this. Then we hit this goal. Then we could do this. Then we hit this goal. Now we can experience this. But every single one of those is an experience. You see, it's not monetary, right? That's how you get to experience it as a team. That's, to me, that's the most important. Set goals. Set different goals, and then you have different experiences that cost different amounts of money.
So that's, I'm thinking about, being W-2, that experience of being in corporate America and having your quarterly report or your monthly one-on-one or something like that. And just how none of it, most of the time you're chasing an ephemeral number, right? A lot of us, 90% of us are living in a world where we're just doing the day-to-day, and then hoping at our annual review that we're not doing terrible, right?
Right.
That's the life. it's completely different to create an environment of aspiration and reward, right? That hard work reward
Yeah.
you were talking about. Absolutely love that. So let's talk specifically about there's going to be a line, right? There's going to be family value, right?
Mhm.
You seem like a person, you are aware of your line as it goes up, probably pretty deep, right? Because you mentioned that your, like, the generation older than you had, its was a large umbrella, and so there's probably some sort of familial value or some sort of a familial story. Would love to hear about that and share that with the Feel Good Father.
Yeah. You know, the story is I tell I can relate to a lot of people who have immigrated to this country. When there are certain values that are really deep in the roots, where growing up, it was all about school. Now, why was it all tied into school? Was because in our family, school was tied into money. Like in general, most people are raised the only way to make a lot of money and to have a good life is to do a lot of schooling, right? I have since realized it's not necessarily true. But growing up, that was the value that was instilled in me. You have to do phenomenal in school. But also, the parents, my mom and dad, came over to the States and they gave up what they had in Hong Kong and China,
Mm.
where they had a decent life. It wasn't like phenomenal, but they also knew that if our family stayed, it's really hard to break out of your social class over there because everyone's connected in one way or another. And if you're not connected already, you can't go to the right school, you won't meet the right people. It's hard to escalate, right? Very rare. So they came over here not knowing the language, taking a job that is more physically intense than they had. And but they gave us an opportunity to do well in school, right? They drilled us. I mean, we were like beat to study, you know? And but it made sense now. It makes sense now, but it didn't make as much sense at the time. Like, dude, Hunter over there who grew up here is not even studying as hard as me. Why am I working so hard? Like my mom and dad would not tolerate B's. B's was like, oh my God, don't even talk about a C. C pretty much means you failed, right? But it was mainly A's. And they drill me on that. But then the value that I carry now is when people always say, oh, why you gotta work so hard? You're going after this and that. I just think back and I'm like, my parents didn't come to the US hoping that I would just be average.
Right.
They didn't come here and work their butt off and did what they'd had to do because they didn't have to, right? So I think they had a much more like the what they wanted to do for their children is way more than what my idea is of what I feel like I had to do. I mean, the amount of sacrifice that they had, it's way more than what I have sacrificed so far. So because of that, I don't see work as hard work as long as it's helping me achieve what I really want to achieve, which is not only freedom, but being able to do things that I really enjoy and love with my family while teaching them the values of money at the same time.
Mhm. The the picture you've painted is so empowering because what it's showing is the impact that we can have as fathers, the impact that we can have on the next generation,
Right.
right? And that impact can be positive or negative. It can be where whatever it happens to be, but there's an impact.
Right.
And the fact that your parents made that choice and what they created, they broke that generational pattern,
Mhm.
right? Very specifically, when you were talking about the social connection, the social class rising the ranks in China, and that's how that society and culture, or parts of it, at least as your experience, are
Right.
like that, that there was sort of a expectation of staying the same.
Right.
And you came and it was created for you, and you're creating something new, right? And you're doing that next big thing for your family. What a wonderful experience for your
Yeah.
own term, but something to live through. That's fantastic. I absolutely love it. There's another element. There's another element of your story that I love to hear, and you're telling me about this in the past, about how you had your perception of what was happening around you, of what your father was doing. I
Right.
would love to hear about that from you, and I know that the Feel Good Father listening would love to learn about that as well.
Awesome. Yeah. My father growing up, when I was growing up, he pretty much worked his butt off, and he handed his paycheck to my mom. And my mom was the sole person who knew where the finances were of the family. She took care of everything. The bills were paid. My dad, my dad didn't even know how to write a check, let alone, yeah, if he was still alive today, all these mobile banking stuff, forget about it. There's no way. There's no way. A username and a login is not in his vocabulary. All right. So what I saw was, growing up, although combined they didn't make a lot of money, but my father almost didn't know what, like, his perception of finances were not there because he never saw what bills were going out. He only saw what was coming in. So when he went to, say, Home Depot and bought like an air compressor for $300, let's just say, my mom would come home and she'd just flip out. Like, oh my God, there's no way that's like a 2 car payments, like, what the heck? What was that? But what I saw is due to the lack of financial communication that they had, there were a lot of things that my father wanted, okay, whether it's tools, whether it's, materialistic stuff, that my mom said no to because we just don't have it. So they got into a lot of arguments about finances all the time. It was like, there's no way we could do this. I don't see how you can go back and see your family in China, because every time you went back, it would cost $5,000-$6,000. And there's no way we can swing that, So it's, you have to save, save, save all the time. You're always strapped for money. And that's how I saw they lived. And even to the point where, as a child growing up, I hated to be in that environment because all I saw was them arguing about money. So growing up, I felt like they didn't love each other because all I saw was them yelling at each other about money all the time. So in my mind, I'm like, man, money is what is really, it's like destroying the happiness of this family, to the point where in high school, I wouldn't go home until 1, 2 o'clock in the morning because I knew that's when they would all be asleep. And I'll go hang out at a friend's house until 12, 1, 2, and, wake up at 6, 7 the next day and go to school. Because I had that experience, I knew early on in high school, when I started getting a paycheck, I started working at 13, selling meatballs in front of a market, as a taste test sampling, But when I made the money, I knew, I was like, I got to figure out, as when I get older, I didn't even have a girlfriend at the time, but I knew, I was like, I am not going to argue with my wife about money. That's the last thing, because I knew what that will turn into. That will turn into just chaos, in a household, and make me believe that if you don't get your money right, you can't love each other, because the money's not right, and that's going to break you guys apart. So that was the lesson I learned. And for a lot of fathers out there, it's like, when you argue in front of your kids, sometimes you don't realize the amount of impact that you have on their lives, whether it's now or in the future. They're listening. They're always listening. I don't care if they're watching TV, they're listening. Right? They're like a sponge. What does a sponge do? It absorbs everything around them. Doesn't matter if it's good or bad. So that's but that's how that's my value, my one huge value, personal value between my wife and I, Jay, is we don't argue about money.
So you're a feel good father. You're listening to this and you're like, yeah, I don't want to argue with my wife or my spouse about money. What are some steps they can take? What can they do? What does this look like?
Well, what it looks like is the two of you have to have an understanding of how the finances work in your household. The worst thing is when one person understands and the other person doesn't. One person feels like we got all the money in the world. The other person understands what a budget is, right? And one person blows money and the other person tries to save. There's a huge misconnect, right, about it. So you got to get your finances right. It's just like a business. A family is like a business. If you don't get your finances right in the business fails. It's the same thing in a family. If you don't get your finances right, which is a crucial part of what we need to do to live in this earth, your family will fail. So communicate.
Are there any specific topics or any specific paradigms that can help somebody along that path?
Depends on what they do, right? If both are holding W-2s, then you, if the financial limit is capped, right? There's a limit to it. Then you got to figure out within that how much the percentage, right? Maybe you need to take, some people have to take, all people should be financial literate, right? What a budget is, how do you segregate your accounts? Percentages are so important. Most of America don't understand that. They don't understand it. They just 76% live paycheck to paycheck, right? Most people have less than $5,000 in their bank account, right? It's like most people are always one emergency away from wiping them out. Mm. It's like one emergency away, whether it's medical, accidents, whatnot, and to wipe them out. So if both people are more financial literate, if one person chooses not to be financial literate, then they just need to be put on a budget. One person needs to take over, and the other person, unless if they want to learn more, should not have any say in it because they don't even know enough to have a say in it. Right? Someone's got it. You got to learn. If you're going to stay clueless, then you can't have any control. You can't actually put someone who is clueless in control. They want the control, but they don't want to learn. Right? So then how is that ever going to work?
Are there any lessons or ways that you're explaining this to your daughter?
I tell her she needs to know how money works. When about a year or two ago, whenever we eat at a restaurant, she'll always see the cost of the bill. I want to show her, like, this costs $70, $80, right? That's a meal. Now, she now is starting to put things into perspective. Like, if she wants to buy a pony toy or whatnot, that's like $15, right? Like 5 pony toys equals a lunch. Or if she gets money from her aunt who gave her $100 for birthday or Christmas and whatnot, she knows how to, like, she has an idea of how much things cost. Like when we go on a trip, a plane ticket, a hotel, I'll tell her this costs, so many hundreds or thousands. Now she has an idea of what that is. I don't want her to be afraid of money. She has to understand the value of it, right? It's the value of money and how hard it is to make it. And we'll go to like trade shows like this. She's into making some soaps right now. And I told her, I said, there's this lady, she will make the soap. She sells it for $11, right? But I know, we talk with her, she says she'll sell it on wholesale. If you buy, say, at least 20 soap bars, it's $5 each. And I said, Addie, look at this. To make $100, all you have to do is buy, right? You're going to make $5 per soap. So you buy 20 soaps from her for 100, you sell it, you're always going to double up on your money. So you spend 100, and she's like, well, $100 of soap. I said, yeah, but you sell it for twice as much, and now you actually make 100. So it's how quickly can you sell that 100 pieces of soap? So now she gets a concept. Oh, okay, that's how money works. I said, most things, if you're buying and selling, it's a double up in price. There's certain commodities that are triple, quadruple, 10 times and whatnot. But I said, in our world, in the health world, supplements, soaps and whatnot, it's about double, and what you buy it for. So I'm showing her that concept of that. And I said, yeah, you can make the soap and try to sell it, or you can buy a lot of soaps from this lady and go sell it at daddy's office. You stand there and say, you got to smile. You stand there like a stick. No one's going to buy crap from you. You smile, you talk to people, you explain to them what the soap is. You got to know the soap, know the ingredients. I'm telling her, I said, you got to know. So I'm teaching her, you got to know your product, right? You got to know what the heck you're selling. Don't just sell it to sell it. I said, why are you selling it? It's healthier for you. It's got oatmeal. It's got coconut. It doesn't have SLS, things that could hurt your skin. I'm teaching her all these things. She's reading about it. So it's making sense to her. So we got to teach them sometime. We got to teach them about money. You got to teach them about finances, and school's not going to teach it, right? But we also homeschool her, so we get to choose what she learns as well.
That's great. How does this is sort of something that a Feel Good Father might not know. I don't know a lot about it. How does it, since education was so important in your upbringing, how does the homeschool system work when it comes to, because I'm thinking college education or high school. So what is if they're homeschooled, what does that look like for entrance into higher education?
It works great because we do part of our homeschooling with a charter school system, which has a homeschool program, and they have enrichment classes that she goes to a couple times a week, right? So they get, they keep tally up the scores every year. We get the curriculums and everything, and we get to choose. Does she want to, in English, read more science-based books or more history-based books? Is she interested in more like fairy tales and fables, or more, kid-friendly, real life experience books, right? Is she going to read an autobiography or like a history book somewhere, So you get to choose all these things, and she gets tested every year on standardized scores, and she's always consistently testing about 1 grade above her English. English is about 1 grade above. Her math is about 2 grades above. So it's these things that she's learning. She's in the 4.5, 5th grade, and I'm already teaching her algebra. Like, okay, there's X and there's a Y. How do you figure out the X and a Y? And whether you play games with it, like instead of call it X and Y, I call it like elephants and tigers. Like, okay, you don't know what this elephant is, what number this elephant has, but there's one elephant over here and a tiger over here. So let's try to figure it out. People call it X and Y's, you can call it anything. I say you can call it squares and circles. I don't care, right? But eventually you're going to try to find a number behind it.
Awesome. I love this financial literacy. I love the simple example of the commerce, right? The buying, the selling. But above and beyond that, I thought it was really interesting because you have this idea of experiences. And part of what you were asking her to do in selling the soap in the office was create an experience for your clients, create an
Yes.
experience for her potential customers. I think that's a really great through line from, right, like what you experienced and how you were inspired through to everything else.
Right.
So so we had the, when we're teaching about going back to the spousal arrangement and talking about learning about money, how you got to have one person's at least got to understand how to budget, have some sort of financial literacy. Next person's got to, at least understand that and at least seed that if the other if their
Yes.
partner has that. Is there another step?
I don't know yet.
Cool.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know what that next step is going to be. But she's always, I'll tell you this, twice this year already, she's gone to real estate conferences with us. We
Mm.
attend about 4 a year. She's already gone to 2. And the 2 that she's gone, she sees some of the similar people. She's interacting with the adults. She comes out to dinner with us and, she drills them on Harry Potter questions. So, so
Right.
it's kind of like she has these interactions with adults that she's not afraid of, once she gets to know you, and she'll run in the back of one of them and just smack their hat. And, and I was like, you can't do that, but she felt comfortable enough where they played around with her enough. She'll like jump off the wall. Hey, catch me, catch me. And she'll do things like that, and where she felt comfortable, right? You know how they go on these like 3 foot ledge walls, and they want you to jump off and catch them and all that. And she'll play with me. She'll play with other people. Where when she has that like the comfortability to do that with strangers that she's only met a couple times, but knowing that how she looks at how we interact with them, she feels that it's safe to interact with them that way. It's really good to see. I don't, she being an only child, I don't think she'll ever have a problem making friends in the adult world because she's already doing it.
Right. Awesome. Love these lessons. I think that we've added a tremendous amount of insight into what does paying the price today mean, right? In order to pay less of a price tomorrow. Like, what does that mean to have that those experiences, that result? Dr. Alex Tam, if folks want to follow up with you, get to know you, find out what you're about, where can they find that?
Yeah, they can find me on LinkedIn, right? They can find me on Facebook. You type in Alex Tam Vacaville, I'm like the only one that shows up,
Okay.
And just hit me up, whether it's talking about fatherhood, you want to chat about different things about life in general, or maybe you grew up in a family that had financial problems, and you're trying to break through something. Reach out to me and let's chat.
Awesome. Dr. Alex Tam, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jay.
Hey, Feel Good Fathers, hit that like button to let YouTube know that you liked this video. Comment below with your thoughts and reactions to this interview. I really want to hear what you have to say. Now, as a personal brand strategist, I hear all the time about coaches, trainers, speakers, and authors doing the right thing, but at the wrong time. We specialize in helping brand builders have more impact, more credibility and clarity, and developing an overall brand strategy. When you work with Brand Builders Group, we'll help you do the right thing at the right time. Request a free brand call below. There's a link in the description. And don't forget to subscribe. You'll get updates when the new episodes are launched, and it really helps out the community and the channel. We'll see you next time.